Hello, and welcome to another quick but enriching episode of Quick Quill, the podcast where we dive into books and news in 15 minutes or less. I'm your host, Nolan. Today, we've got a monumental book on our reading table, Thinking Fast and Slow by Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, a revolutionary look into the machinery of our minds. This is indeed a thrilling exploration. Kahneman proposes that our mind is divided into two systems. System 1, which operates automatically and quickly with little or no effort, and System 2, that pays attention, makes conscious decisions, but is inherently lazy and would rather let System 1 do most of the work. We'll touch on his key arguments, the experiments he uses to validate them, and their implications in our day-to-day lives. In our journey through life, it is our thoughts that steer the way we perceive the world. Hence, mastering the ability to direct them is crucial. The human mind, in its quest for convenience, might endanger our moral decision-making. It tends to swap effort with innovation, a phenomenon mainly driven by our thoughts. As humans, we often fall into the trap of overestimating our understanding of the world around us and underestimating the power of randomness in life's events. Our decision-making is greatly influenced by factors such as illusions, availability, and personal experiences, which often sway us into formulating skewed judgments. Contrary to popular belief, thinking is an intricate craft that requires science and practice. To gain mastery over our thoughts, it is essential to recognize and understand the root of our intuitive beliefs and assumptions. Our mindset is largely molded by our experiences, evidence, and hard facts. Therefore, it is crucial to discern the right moment to toggle between gut instincts and empirically backed facts. Let's talk about a true master of his field, Daniel Kahneman. His profound understanding of behavioral economics, cognitive thought processes, and psychology sets him amongst the leading experts. Kahneman is a staunch advocate for basing conclusions on solid facts rather than mere assumptions, and he simplifies understanding of behavioral patterns by employing relevant examples and instances. Psychologists Keith Stanovich and Richard West have identified that our cognition operates through two primary modes. The first, System 1, functions instinctively, swiftly, and without any conscious control or significant effort. The second, System 2, is responsible for focusing attention on intense mental activities that require considerable cognitive effort. In an attempt to avoid cognitive overwhelm, we humans naturally divide tasks into manageable pieces, either consciously or subconsciously. This is largely driven by our inherent inclination to opt for solutions that demand the least mental exertion and energy. Understanding this process and harnessing it can lead to greater efficiency and productivity in our day-to-day life. The moment we encounter a task demanding a substantial amount of mental effort, our focus begins to wane. To maintain a harmonious balance within our cognitive processes, System 2 plays a critical role. Its key responsibilities involve regulating, scrutinizing, and moderating the propositions and actions emerging from System 1. Interestingly, these processes rely more on faith and intuition than on hard faith and intuition than on hard fact. System 1 typically presents information to System 2 shrouded in impressions. These impressions eventually morph into beliefs that we, as individuals, cling to. These beliefs, in turn, manifest into actions that come to define our identity. Our brains are inherently designed to adapt to varying speeds and stress levels. This is where the concept of cognitive ease steps in, as it influences our behavior when we're pursuing a task effortlessly. Another fascinating role of System 1 is in establishing our sense of normality, shaping our reactions to surprises, and determining the causes of these experiences. However, it's worth noting that System 1 does not always produce accurate interpretations of the information it receives. Its primary concern isn't the factual accuracy of the information, but rather the formulation of its own conclusions. When it comes to navigating through challenging situations or solving complex problems, System 2 often steps in as a lifesaver, diligently seeking an exit strategy. Whenever System 1 stumbles upon a particularly tough problem that it can't solve, it calls upon System 2 to swing into action and find a swift solution. Yet, there are instances when our brains might trick both us and itself into underestimating the complexity of a task. This cognitive illusion arises because our brain is constantly looking to conserve energy whenever it performs a task. Therefore, if System 1 deems a situation or problem manageable, it won't trigger System 2 for a System 2 for assistant. Together, these two cognitive systems work in concert, enabling us to accomplish tasks and make informed decisions. We humans are often more prone to forming judgments based on our personal biases and instincts, rather than relying on concrete facts and statistical data. We often find ourselves drawing conclusions about a larger context based on the snippets of information or samples provided to us. This cognitive behavior extends to numerical data as well. For instance, when informed that 5 million people work in the public sector in Bulgaria, our instinct is to assume that the population of Bulgaria is relatively small, drawing this conclusion purely based on the provided sample. These are the mechanisms that shape our interpretation and assessment of our surroundings. We also encounter what is known as the anchoring effect. This cognitive bias comes into play when an initial piece of information, or anchor, influences our estimation of an unknown quantity. We humans tend to attribute value to objects or ideas based on an associated numerical anchor. A fascinating experiment conducted by Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman, which involved a rigged wheel of fortune, perfectly illustrates this concept. Tversky and Kahneman created a wheel that was rigged to stop at either 10 or 65. They then recruited students from the University of Oregon to participate in their experiment. After spinning the rigged wheel, the participants were posed with two questions. Is the percentage of African nations in the UN larger or smaller than the UN larger or smaller than the number on the wheel? What is your best guess of the percentage of African nations in the United Nations? Interestingly, although the number on the wheel had no relevance to the questions being asked, even without the wheel being rigged, the participants' responses were nonetheless influenced by this arbitrary number. The anchor for their responses was primarily determined by the number that appeared on the wheel. Participants who spun a 10 tended to guess a lower percentage of African nations in the UN, whereas those who spun a 65 guessed a higher percentage. Another cognitive phenomenon is that the ease with which we can recall examples often influences our perception of how frequent certain events are. The moment a similar instance pops into our minds, our brains begin assembling a collection of comparable occurrences, tricking us into believing that such situations are common. A dramatic event, like a train wreck that gains significant media coverage, can temporarily amplify the perceived frequency of such incidents in our minds. This sudden increase in the event's mental availability can alter our feelings about travel by rail, making us believe that train wrecks are a common occurrence and thus influencing our overall view of train travel. Our perceptions of the present and the future are often skewed by insufficient or inaccurate historical information. There's a common belief that the most catastrophic version of an event represents its extreme limit. Therefore, any preventative actions we undertake are usually gauged against that worst-case scenario. For instance, if a wall is being built to protect against flooding, its strength and height will likely be determined based on the most severe flood in memory. Economist Howard Kunruther asserts that preventative measures are typically designed to withstand the most disastrous event previously encountered. In today's world, the media often fosters various misconceptions about the real scope of things and their relative importance. As humans, we have a tendency to simplify life by envisioning an ideal world in our minds. When it comes to processing information and making judgments, we often prioritize evidence over base rate. Base rates typically emerge from general, non-specific information, prompting our brain to draw conclusions based on broad assumptions. However, as soon as we receive more specific information, our focus shifts, and we start to draw conclusions based on that detailed evidence rather than the base rate. But an unwavering belief in conclusions drawn from specific information can sometimes lead us astray. For instance, while it might be true that a tall, slender individual is more likely to be a basketball player, this is not always the case. Relying solely on descriptive information for conclusions can sometimes lead us down the path of erroneous assumption. When we talk about descriptions, there's a clear distinction between providing additional details and being specific. While the inclusion of more details might enhance the believability of a piece of information, it doesn't necessarily guarantee its accuracy. The hallmark of quality information is precision. Even concise descriptions can be highly precise and thus significantly aid our quick thinking capability. However, even though data and statistics play a pivotal role in drawing conclusions, they may not offer the same level of insight as our real-life experiences. When cultural perspectives clash with global statistics, disbelief often follows. For instance, if you hail from a culture where consuming animals is not practiced, the statistic that humans are responsible for the demise of 65 of the world's animal population might seem improbable. Moreover, despite the presence of concrete facts and data, situations do not always adhere to established patterns. The fact that a community has been terrorized by a tall serial killer for a year doesn't necessarily mean the next crime will be perpetrated by the same individual. In scenarios where specific information is lacking, existing facts can be useful guides. Interestingly, reactions to performance aren't solely driven by praise or criticism. If someone is reprimanded for poor performance, their subsequent performance is likely to improve. Conversely, praise for an exceptional performance may be followed by a dip in quality the next time around. These reactions are not entirely due to the praise or scolding received. Natural variations in performance also play a role. A person who has performed poorly will naturally be inclined to improve, while a person who has excelled may have simply been fortunate. Daniel Kahneman suggests that it's more productive to reward improved performance than to punish mistakes. The allure of illusions and perceived knowledge can often trick you into thinking that your understanding surpasses its actual extent. System 2 shoulders the responsibility of rectifying these instinctive forecasts. This part of the brain delves deep into your reservoir of experiences, both past and current, gathering information. Left unchecked, these instinctive forecasts can lead to complications. Halting such forecasts is challenging, but you can counter their influence by honing your ability to recognize them. By staying alert against these predictions, you can gain better command over your thought. Nassim Taleb, a renowned American scholar and writer, asserts that humans regularly deceive themselves by creating frail narratives of past events and accepting them as the truth. He holds the view that these historical accounts mold our present circumstances and inevitably cast their shadows on our future as well. The mirage of comprehension dictates and impacts our perception and approach to life. Our accumulated knowledge about past events is often reformulated to cater to specific perspectives. This delusion emphasizes occurrences from the past, while conveniently ignoring what didn't transpire. These skewed narratives engender a fallacious belief in humans that, by understanding the past, they can manipulate and mold the future. Yet, how effectively can we sculpt the future when our understanding of the past is colored and distorted to fit certain narrative? Successful outcome often leads people to assume that the process leading up to it was equally successful, even though this is not necessarily true. No matter how confident we are about our understanding of the past, much of the narratives we've heard focus only on the outcomes while ignoring the intricate steps leading up to them. Often, validation is rooted more in beliefs than in solid evidence. Humans are prone to affirm what they believe due to influences, societal pressure, and unexamined faith. Just because you're certain about something doesn't necessarily make it accurate or true. It simply means that your system once found the information easy to process and hence made hasty conclusions. System 1 tends to adopt a what you see is all there is approach when it opts for an easy route. This illusion of validation contributes to our bias in decision-making. Well-structured, formulaic impressions are often more reliable than intuition and assumptions. Whenever you have a structured guide to reinforce your impression, prefer it over your gut feeling. Intuition can lead to biased judgments, while formulas provide a guideline for tackling tasks. In familiar situations, it's generally safe to trust your basic intuition. However, when the environment changes, it's advisable to be more cautious and rely more on empirical facts. Changes in environment mean learning new things. And since intuition is largely based on stored information, it's unwise to rely solely on it in such situations. Moreover, the best-case scenario shouldn't be the only one considered in planning and executing projects. Human tendency to base plans on information from the best-case scenario is limiting and could potentially lead to faulty decision-making. Harnessing optimism as a shield against uncertainty requires finesse and understanding. Ignoring doubt can fuel both confidence and overconfidence. A prudent approach involves tempering your optimism by using a technique known as premortem. This strategy involves envisioning a scenario where a project has already failed. By simulating this failure, your brain is compelled to identify potential reasons for the failure. In turn, this allows you to uncover potential pitfalls and weaknesses that can be addressed and corrected beforehand. The value we attach to possessions and happiness is often contingent upon our ownership of them. The worth of an item is influenced by the present financial state of the potential owner. For instance, when you are affluent, things within your means seem valuable to you, but they might seem less valuable when you're financially constrained. When dealing with risk and potential loss, we instinctively gravitate toward the safest option, regardless of the possible outcome. This tendency is most obvious in gambling, where we tend to shy away from risks, especially when the likelihood of losing surpasses that of winning. We are intrinsically wired to be more focused on averting losses than on striving to secure gains. We often envision future events, but overestimating these probabilities can lead us to obsess over highly unlikely events. These rare events can shape our behavior, even if their actual occurrence is minimal. For instance, the prospect of finding a large sum of money on the street is highly unlikely, but because it has happened before, we entertain its possibility. While it's beneficial to have risk mitigation strategies to protect against losses, it's also crucial not to let them dominate our decision-making process. Every choice should be seen as one among a myriad of options, and possibilities containing loss should not be immediately discarded, as rewards and punishments greatly influence our responses and behaviors. It's essential to pay them due attention. They act as significant drivers of our actions and can serve as helpful tools for behavior modification. Our minds process statements influenced by their presentation. A well-articulated assertion can effectively persuade our minds, while a poorly constructed one can create complication. It's been established that our brain consists of two operating systems, System 1, which handles quick and simplistic evaluations, and System 2, which engages in thorough analysis and comparison. Humans possess two selves that influence our decision-making. The experiencing self and the remembering self, these two selves interact to guide our decisions. The experiencing self forms judgments based on immediate experiences, while the remembering self relies on reactions from past encounters. Interestingly, people often overlook the experiencing self, focusing instead on their accrued memories, which then form the basis for their decisions. Happiness is a subjective concept, having varying definitions that reflect individual differences in judgment. Its interpretation is as diverse as the people defining it. Our thoughts are the products of numerous events that shape our existence. By mastering how we think, we enhance our decision-making abilities. Recognizing our two cognitive systems and training ourselves to regulate our thoughts gives us an edge. It empowers us to make informed judgments about life and people, relying heavily on understanding our thought patterns. Many people grapple with ineffective thinking or difficulty understanding their own thought processes. However, our actions are significantly influenced by our thoughts, and if they seem misguided, there are several ways to recalibrate our mind. This can be initiated by striving for accuracy when making descriptions and prioritizing evidence over bias. Such actions broaden our perspectives, enabling us to make improved choices. Clear thinking opens up a world of opportunities in both our personal and professional lives. The distinguishing factor for successful individuals is their ability to toggle between quick thinking and meticulous deliberation. Once you learn how to utilize your thoughts to direct your actions and decisions, success in various areas of life becomes attainable. The secret to success isn't mystic. It requires focus, determination, and the right mindset, all of which are guided by our thought process. As a simple exercise, try to introspect your thought process. Assess your judgments about people, and ascertain whether they are accurate or not. If they are, keep it up. If not, work on minimizing bias by looking beyond your intuition. And there you have it. Another episode of Quick Quill comes to a close. We hope you enjoyed our fast yet thorough delve into Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, and we hope our listeners have walked away with some valuable nuggets of wisdom. There's a universe of depth within this book that goes beyond what we could cover in our time together, so we definitely recommend picking up the full book for those keen to learn more. And as always, we're eager to hear from you. Share your thoughts, questions, or book suggestions by reaching out to us via email or through our social media channels on Twitter and Instagram Quick Quill. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this video to your friends